Maya Richardson stood at the window of her new office on the 15th floor, looking down at the busy streets of Philadelphia. The morning sun reflected off the glass buildings, making the city shine like gold. At 35 years old, she had just become the youngest district attorney in the city's history, and the first black woman to hold this position. She hadn't told anyone about her appointment yet, not even her mother. The official announcement wouldn't come for another 2 weeks. Maya wanted to use this quiet time to understand what she was getting into. Her dark brown eyes moved from the window to the large stack of files on her desk. These were all cases involving police officers who had been accused of misconduct, but never faced any real punishment. 217 cases in just 3 years, she whispered to herself, shaking her head. Her predecessor, Richard Collins, had been famous for one thing: letting police officers get away with almost anything. Maya ran her hand over her neatly braided hair, a habit she had when she was deep in thought. The office still smelled like Collins' expensive cigars. Maya wrinkled her nose and opened a window. As fresh air filled the room, her assistant, Tom, knocked on the door. "Ms. Richardson, your coffee is here," he said, placing a steaming cup on her desk. "And Officer Jenkins is waiting outside. He says it's about the Martinez case." Maya nodded, picking up one of the files. "Tell them I'll need 15 minutes, Tom, and please bring me everything we have on Officers Barrett and Conway from the 7th Precinct." Tom looked surprised. "Those two? They've got quite a reputation. Some say they're the worst, but nothing ever sticks to them." "That's exactly why I want to look into them," Maya replied, opening the Martinez file. It was a familiar story: a young Latino man arrested for drug possession, claiming the officers had planted evidence. The case was dismissed due to lack of evidence, but the arrest had cost Martinez his job and his savings. As she read through the details, Maya remembered her own father's voice from years ago. He had been a beat cop in these same streets for 25 years. "Baby girl," he used to say, "a badge doesn't make you right, it just gives you power. And power without accountability is dangerous." Her father had died trying to report corruption in his own precinct. The official report said it was a random shooting, but Maya had always known better. She was 12 then, and that day had set her on the path to where she was now. Maya walked to the old filing cabinet in the corner. Inside the top drawer was a worn leather folder, her personal collection of similar cases from the past 5 years. She had been tracking them since her days as a public defender. Names, dates, patterns of behavior, everything that could help prove these weren't isolated incidents. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother. "Baby, when are you going to tell people about the appointment? I'm tired of pretending I don't know." Maya smiled. Her mother had always been her biggest supporter, even when she quit her high-paying job at a law firm to become a public defender. "Just 2 more weeks, Mom," she typed back. "I need to understand what we're dealing with first." Looking at her reflection in the window, Maya straightened her navy blue blazer. She had dressed carefully today, professional but not flashy. In this building, a black woman had to walk a fine line between being assertive and being labeled aggressive. Tom knocked again. "Miss Richardson, I got those files you asked for, and Officer Jenkins is getting impatient." "Coming," Maya called out. She gathered the Martinez file and her notes. Before heading to the door, she paused at her desk and looked at the photo of her father in his police uniform, smiling proudly at the camera. "We're going to fix this, Dad," she whispered, "one case at a time." As she walked out of her office, Maya didn't know that in just 2 weeks, she wouldn't be just reading about police misconduct. She would be experiencing it firsthand. But for now, she was focused on the task ahead, ready to begin the quiet work of justice that would soon turn into something much bigger than she had planned. The clock on Maya's desk showed 11:45 p.m. when she finally decided to head home. The office lights had gone dark hours ago, leaving only her small desk lamp glowing in the large building. She had lost track of time reviewing case files, especially those involving Officers Barrett and Conway. The pattern she found was disturbing: 28 arrests in the past year, all minorities, all following the same script. "Just 1 more week," she muttered, gathering her things. The official announcement of her appointment would come soon, but Maya wanted to gather as much evidence as possible before then. She knew things would get complicated once everyone knew who she was. The parking garage was almost empty when Maya walked to her car, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. A security guard nodded at her as she passed, used to seeing her leave late. The night air was cool as she drove out onto the quiet Philadelphia streets, her mind still on the cases she'd reviewed. She didn't notice the police car following her at first. It was only when she saw the flashing lights in her rearview mirror that Maya realized she was being pulled over. Looking at her speedometer, she knew she hadn't been speeding. Still, she did exactly what her father had taught her, turned on her interior lights, kept her hands visible on the steering wheel, and pulled over slowly. Two officers approached her car, one on each side. Their flashlights beamed through her windows, nearly blinding her. Maya recognized them immediately. Officers James Barrett and Michael Conway. Her heart began to race, but she kept her face calm. License and registration, Barrett demanded, not bothering with a greeting. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a crew cut and cold blue eyes. Maya noticed his body camera was turned off. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over, officer?" Maya asked politely, keeping her hands where they could see them. Conway, shorter but just as intimidating, leaned down on the passenger side. "You matched the description of a drug dealer in the area." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Maya knew this tactic well. She had defended too many clients who'd heard the same line. "I find that hard to believe," she said carefully. "I'm a lawyer, just heading home from work." "Oh, a lawyer?" Barrett's tone turned mocking. "Then you should know that questioning an officer during a stop isn't smart. License and registration, now." Maya reached slowly for her glove compartment, aware of both officers watching her every move. As she handed over her documents, Conway's flashlight beam swept across her back seat, lingering on her briefcase. "Step out of the car, ma'am," Barrett ordered suddenly. "On what grounds?" Maya asked, though she already knew what was coming. "Your behavior seems erratic. We need to conduct a search." Barrett's hand moved to his weapon, a clear intimidation tactic. Maya felt a chill run down her spine, but years of courtroom experience helped her maintain her composure. "I do not consent to a search," she stated firmly. "There's no probable cause." Refusing to cooperate with law enforcement, Conway said, writing in his notepad. "Could be signs of intoxication." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Barrett grabbed Maya's arm roughly, pulling her from the car. Conway began searching her vehicle without permission. Maya stood in the cold night air, watching as Conway emerged from her car with a small plastic bag she had never seen before. Well, Conway smirked, holding up the bag of white powder. "Looks like we've got ourselves a lawyer who likes to party." "That's not mine," Maya said steadily, even as Barrett twisted her arms behind her back. "You just planted that evidence, and we both know it." Resisting arrest, Barrett announced loudly, though Maya hadn't moved, "and making false accusations against an officer." As they handcuffed her, Maya noticed movement in a second-floor window of the house across the street. A young girl was holding up her phone, recording everything. Maya made sure to stay calm and speak clearly, knowing that every word might be captured on video. Neither officer noticed the witness. They were too busy following their usual script, not realizing that this time they had chosen the wrong target. In just a few hours, the comfortable world of corruption would begin to unravel. But first, Maya would have to endure the humiliation of being thrown into the back of their patrol car, charged with a crime she didn't commit. The ride to the police station was rough. Officer Barrett deliberately hit every pothole he could find, making Maya bounce painfully in the back seat. Her hands, cuffed behind her back, were already starting to go numb. She kept her eyes forward, refusing to show fear. "Not so proud now, are you, counselor?" Conway asked from the passenger seat, turning to look at her with a smirk. "Bet you wish you'd been more cooperative during the stop." Maya remained silent. As a lawyer, she knew anything she said could be twisted against her. Instead, she focused on memorizing every detail: the time on the car's dashboard, 12:23 a.m., the car number, Unit 714, and the route they were taking. Something wasn't right about that last part. "Aren't we going to Central Booking?" she asked calmly, noticing they had turned away from downtown. Barrett laughed. "Oh, we're taking the scenic route. Need to finish up some paperwork first." The police car pulled into an empty parking lot behind an abandoned warehouse. Maya's heart started beating faster, but she kept her voice steady. This is highly irregular, officers. There are cameras in this car. Technical difficulties, Conway replied, pointing to the dashboard camera's dark screen. Equipment malfunction. Happens all the time in our unit. Both officers got out of the car. Maya watched in her side mirror as they had a quick discussion, then Barrett opened her door. The cold night air rushed in. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered, grabbing her arm roughly. Maya knew she had to think quickly. Officer Jenkins is expecting my call, she said, naming the first officer who came to mind. He knows I was working late tonight. This made them pause for a second, but Conway just shrugged. Phone records will show you never made that call. Now move. They led her to the side of the warehouse, away from the street lights. Maya noticed broken glass crunching under her feet. Her expensive work heels were scuffing on the rough ground, leaving marks she hoped someone might find later. Here's how this works, Barrett said, pushing her against the cold brick wall. We found drugs in your car. You were uncooperative and aggressive during the stop. You tripped and fell during processing. Simple story. And if you try to say anything different, Conway added, well, who's going to believe you over two decorated officers? Maya looked directly into Barrett's eyes. I believe the term you're looking for is aggravated assault under color of authority. Section 242 of Title 18, United States Code. Conway stepped closer, his face inches from hers. Listen to her, James, still trying to play lawyer. You should know that section well, Maya continued, her voice growing stronger. It covers civil rights violations by law enforcement. Carries a penalty of up to 10 years if physical injury is involved. Barrett's hand tightened on her arm. Shut up. You think quoting laws makes you special? You're just another. A car's headlights suddenly swept across the parking lot. Both officers turned quickly, instinctively stepping away from Maya. It was just someone turning around, but that moment of interruption changed something in the air. Let's just book her, Conway said, suddenly nervous. It's getting late. Barrett nodded reluctantly. Yeah, the drugs in her car are enough. They walked Maya back to the patrol car, less roughly this time. As they drove to the station, she noticed them exchanging worried glances. Her knowledge of the law had rattled them, made them uncertain. They were used to victims who didn't know their rights, who couldn't quote federal statutes while being threatened. At the station, they handed her over to the booking officer, a tired-looking woman who began the processing mechanically. As Maya's fingerprints were taken, she heard Barrett and Conway in the next room, typing up their report. They were creating their version of events, not knowing that soon, every lie they wrote would come back to haunt them. Maya winced as the flash from the booking camera went off. This mugshot would show her with smudged makeup and messy hair, but she held her head high anyway. Somewhere in this same building was her new office, not yet set up. In less than 2 weeks, she would be running this entire department. But for now, she had to play her part, the wrongly accused lawyer who would soon become these corrupt officers' worst nightmare. Sarah Martinez couldn't sleep that night. The 16-year-old had been studying for her history test when the police lights outside her window caught her attention. Now, 2 hours later, she sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at her phone screen and watching the video she had recorded for the 20th time. This isn't right, she whispered to herself, adjusting her glasses. The woman in the video, the one the police had arrested, looked familiar. Sarah was sure she had seen her before at the community center where her mother worked. The lawyer who had helped families with free legal advice. What was her name? Sarah's fingers hovered over the social media app on her phone. She had never posted anything important before, mostly just pictures with her friends and funny videos of her cat. But this was different. She had caught everything on video, the unlawful search, the planted evidence, the rough treatment. Her hands were shaking slightly as she created a new post. I have to do something, she told herself, remembering how the woman had stayed calm even when the officers were threatening her. Sarah typed carefully, Police Cairo Pichalayan caught on video. Watch these officers plant evidence and frame an innocent woman. This happened tonight in Philadelphia. Please share. She added the video and pressed post before she could change her mind. Then she turned off her phone, her heart beating fast. What if the police found out she had recorded them? Her mother always told her to stay away from trouble, especially with the police. Being a Hispanic family in this neighborhood wasn't easy. The next morning, Sarah woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop. Her video had gone viral overnight. There were thousands of shares, comments, and news organizations asking for permission to use the footage. She sat up in bed, shocked by the response. Sarah, her mother called from downstairs. Come eat breakfast. You'll be late for school. As Sarah got ready for school, she kept checking the comments. People were outraged. Some recognized the officers from similar encounters. Others had identified the woman as Maya Richardson, a respected lawyer known for helping low-income families. Sarah felt a mix of pride and fear. She had done the right thing, but what would happen next? At school, everyone was talking about the video. Sarah hadn't put her name on the post, but her best friend Maria knew it was her. She recognized Sarah's bedroom curtains in the reflection. You're so brave, Maria whispered during lunch. But aren't you scared? Those officers look dangerous. Sarah nodded, picking at her food. I am scared, but you know what's scarier? Letting them keep doing this to people. Remember when they arrested your cousin for no reason last year? By afternoon, the video had reached national news. Sarah watched from her classroom as students pulled it up on their phones. The teachers were discussing it in the hallways. Local TV stations were showing up in the neighborhood, interviewing people about Officers Barrett and Conway. After school, Sarah's mother was waiting for her at home, looking worried. She worked as a counselor at the community center and had recognized Maya Richardson in the video too. Maya, her mother said, holding up her phone, did you record this? Sarah took a deep breath and nodded. Her mother's face softened. That woman they arrested, she helped the Rodriguez family keep their house last year, her mother said quietly. She's a good person. But Sarah, what you did was dangerous. I had to, Mom, Sarah replied, her voice stronger than she felt. You always tell me to stand up for what's right. Her mother hugged her tightly. Yes, but I also want you to be safe. She pulled back and looked at Sarah seriously. If the police figure out it was you. They won't, Sarah assured her, though she wasn't certain. I was careful, and besides, the truth is already out there now. They can't stop it. That evening, as more news stations picked up the story, Sarah received a private message. It was from Maya Richardson's law office. They wanted to talk to her about the video. Sarah stared at the message for a long time, knowing that whatever she decided to do next would change everything, not just for her, but for every person who had ever been wrongly accused by these officers. Officers Barrett and Conway walked into the police station the next morning feeling confident. They had done this dozens of times before. Arrest someone, plant evidence, file the paperwork. By now, it was almost routine. The lawyer from last night would be just another name in their growing list of convictions. Captain wants to see us, Officer Chen called out as they passed the front desk. Says it's urgent. Barrett straightened his uniform. Probably wants to congratulate us on another drug bust. Conway laughed, adjusting his badge. Did you finish the report? Yeah, kept it simple. Suspicious behavior, refused to cooperate, found drugs in the glove compartment. Same old story. Barrett pushed the elevator button for the third floor. Neither officer had checked social media that morning. They hadn't seen the viral video that was spreading across the internet like wildfire. They didn't know that their comfortable world was about to collapse. The captain's secretary wasn't at her desk when they arrived. Barrett knocked on the office door. Come in, a woman's voice called out. The officers exchanged confused looks. That wasn't the captain's voice. Conway shrugged and opened the door. The first thing they noticed was that the office looked different. The captain's old golf trophies were gone. The desk had been rearranged, and sitting behind it was the woman they had arrested last night, Maya Richardson. She was wearing a crisp black suit now, her hair neatly styled. There was no sign of the rough night they had put her through. Next to her stood the police captain, looking uncomfortable. Officers Barrett and Conway, Maya said calmly, please, have a seat. Both men stood frozen in the doorway. Barrett's face had turned pale. Conway's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the back of a chair. I don't understand, Barrett started. Where's Captain Stevens? Still here, the captain said gruffly. But Ms. Richardson, District Attorney Richardson, wanted to speak with you personally. District Attorney, Conway's voice cracked. Maya pressed a button on her laptop. The large TV screen on the wall came to life, showing the video from last night. The quality was perfect, catching every moment. The illegal search, the planted evidence, the threats behind the warehouse. I was going to wait 2 more weeks before announcing my appointment, Maya said, watching their faces. But after last night's incident, I decided we should move things along. Barrett tried to regain his composure. That video is fake. Someone edited. Save it, Maya cut him off. The FBI's forensic team has already verified the footage, and this morning, Sarah Martinez came forward as the witness who recorded it. Conway sank into his chair. We didn't know. We never would have. Never would have what? Maya leaned forward. Never would have planted evidence if you knew I was the new DA. Never would have threatened me if you knew I had power. That's exactly the problem, officers. You shouldn't do it to anyone. She opened a folder on her desk. I spent the last 2 weeks reviewing your cases. Interesting patterns emerged. 28 arrests in the past year, all minorities, all following the same script. And now we have proof of how you operate. The captain stepped forward. Officers Barrett and Conway, please surrender your badges and weapons. You're both suspended pending a full investigation. Barrett's face turned red with anger. You can't do this. The union. The police union has already been contacted, Maya interrupted. They've seen the video too. No one's coming to save you this time. As the officers slowly placed their badges on the desk, Maya opened another folder. Inside were dozens of photos. Faces of all the innocent people these officers had framed over the years. One last thing, she said, holding up her mugshot from the previous night. This photo will hang in my office as a reminder. Not of what you did to me, but of what you've been doing to countless others who didn't have the power to fight back. The sound of handcuffs clicking echoed in the room as internal affairs officers entered. Barrett and Conway, who had put so many innocent people in handcuffs, were about to experience it themselves. Their reign of corruption was finally over. The investigation room at the district attorney's office buzzed with activity. 3 weeks had passed since officers Barrett and Conway's arrest, and Maya had assembled a special task force to dig deeper into their cases. The walls were covered with photos, timelines, and sticky notes connecting various incidents. Lisa Chen, a former FBI investigator Maya had hired, stood in front of a large whiteboard. We've identified 47 cases that match their pattern, she explained, pointing to a cluster of photos. All victims were either black or Hispanic. All arrests happened late at night. All involved planted evidence. Maya studied the faces on the wall. Each picture told a story of lives destroyed by corrupt officers. Some people had lost their jobs. Others had lost custody of their children. Many were still in prison. What about their supervisor, Sergeant Williams? Maya asked, picking up a coffee cup that had gone cold hours ago. There's no way they operated like this for years without protection from above. Tom, Maya's assistant, entered the room with a stack of files. You need to see this, he said, spreading papers across the table. I found something interesting in Williams' bank records. The team gathered around as Tom explained. Every month for the past 3 years, Williams had received large deposits from an offshore account. The dates matched perfectly with Barrett and Conway's biggest drug arrests. They weren't just framing innocent people, Lisa realized, her eyes widening. They were working with real drug dealers, arresting innocent people to meet their quotas while letting the actual criminals operate freely. Maya felt her heart race. This was bigger than she had imagined. Who else was involved? We interviewed Officer Jenkins yesterday. Another investigator spoke up. He started talking as soon as we showed him the evidence. Says this goes all the way up to Deputy Commissioner Roberts. The room fell silent. Deputy Commissioner Roberts was one of the most powerful figures in the Philadelphia Police Department. He had appeared on national TV just last week, condemning Barrett and Conway as bad apples in an otherwise clean department. Get me everything on Roberts, Maya ordered. Bank records, phone logs, emails, everything. As the team worked, Sarah Martinez sat in a small office next door, helping identify more victims. The teenage whistleblower had become an essential part of the investigation, her memory for faces and details proving invaluable. I remember this man, Sarah said, pointing to a photo. He used to work at the grocery store near my house. Barrett and Conway arrested him last year. His family had to move away after that. Maya sat down next to Sarah. You've been incredibly brave through all this. How are you holding up? Sarah managed a small smile. Better now. The threat stopped after you provided security for my family. And my mom says I did the right thing. A knock on the door interrupted them. Lisa rushed in, holding her laptop. Maya, you need to see this. We found Robert's secret email account. He's been communicating with someone called Big Fish for years. The emails were coded, but the meaning was clear. Roberts had been protecting a major drug operation in exchange for millions of dollars. Barrett and Conway were just small pieces in a much larger puzzle. Maya stood up, her mind racing with the implications. Call the FBI. This just became a federal investigation. As her team sprang into action, Maya walked to her office window. The same view she had admired on her first day now felt different. Somewhere in this city, powerful people were realizing their time was up. The wall of corruption that had seemed unbreakable was starting to crack. Her phone buzzed with a message from the mayor. Emergency meeting in 1 hour. Bring everything you have. Maya looked at her father's photo on her desk. Almost there, Dad, she whispered. This is bigger than we thought, but we're going to clean up this city. One corrupt officer at a time. She grabbed her coat and briefcase, ready to face whatever came next. The investigation had started with 2 corrupt officers, but it was about to expose a system of corruption that had poisoned the city for years. And Maya Richardson was just getting started. The mayor's office was packed with people when Maya arrived. FBI agents in dark suits stood along the walls. The police commissioner sat nervously at the conference table, along with several city council members. News vans were already gathering outside City Hall, their satellite dishes pointing skyward. Maya walked to the front of the room, carrying a thick folder of evidence. She noticed Deputy Commissioner Roberts sitting in the corner, trying to look calm. His left leg bounced slightly under the table, a sign of nervousness she had often noticed in guilty defendants. Thank you all for coming, Maya began, her voice steady. What I'm about to share will shock many of you, but it needs to be said. She nodded to an FBI agent who started the presentation. Pictures appeared on the large screen, evidence of money transfers, secret meetings, and years of coordinated corruption. The room grew tenser with each new revelation. This goes beyond Officers Barrett and Conway, Maya explained. We've uncovered a network of corruption that reaches the highest levels of the department. Innocent people were arrested while real criminals operated freely, all protected by badges and power. Roberts stood up suddenly. These are lies. She's just trying to make a name for herself. Sit down, James, the mayor ordered, his face grim. Let her finish. Maya clicked to the next slide. Here are the bank records showing monthly payments to key officers. Here are emails discussing which neighborhoods to target, and here, she paused for effect, is proof that Deputy Commissioner Roberts has been working with drug cartels for the past 5 years. The room erupted in chaos. Roberts made a dash for the door, but found his path blocked by FBI agents. As they handcuffed him, he shouted, "You don't understand. The system works this way. It's always worked this way." Maya raised her voice above the noise. Not anymore. Over the next hour, she laid out her plan for reform. New oversight committees. Body cameras that couldn't be turned off. Regular audits of all arrests. A civilian review board with real power. Training programs to address racial bias. Some of you won't like these changes, she acknowledged. Some of you might fight them. But know this, the old way of doing things ends today. The police commissioner, looking defeated, spoke up. How many officers are involved? 28 so far, Maya replied, and we expect to find more. But let me be clear, this isn't about destroying the police department. It's about making it better. About making it serve all citizens equally. In the back of the room, Sarah Martinez sat with her mother, watching history unfold. The teenager who had dared to record police misconduct was now seeing the full impact of her courage. Lisa Chen entered the room and whispered something in Maya's ear. More dirty cops were coming forward, wanting to confess before they were caught. The wall of silence was crumbling. One more thing, Maya addressed the room. Starting tomorrow, we'll begin reviewing every case Barrett and Conway ever handled. Every person they arrested deserves a fair chance at justice. A city council member raised his hand. The cost of all this, the reviews, the reforms, the training. What's the cost of injustice? Maya countered. What's the cost of letting corrupt officers destroy innocent lives? Whatever this costs, it's less expensive than doing nothing. As the meeting ended, reporters outside were already getting details from their sources. By nightfall, Philadelphia would be national news again, not for corruption this time, but for facing it head-on. Maya gathered her things, exhausted but determined. Her phone was full of messages. Other cities wanting to know about her reform plans, civil rights organizations offering support, and more whistleblowers coming forward. Sarah approached her before she left. Did we really do it? Is it really going to change? Maya smiled at the young woman who had helped start it all. Change is already happening, but this is just the beginning. Real reform takes time and courage like yours. As they walked out of City Hall together, Maya saw protesters gathering with signs supporting the reforms. Among them were faces she recognized. People who had been wrongly arrested, families who had lost everything to corrupt officers, citizens demanding change. The hard work was just beginning, but for the first time in years, hope was winning over fear in the streets of Philadelphia. 1 year had passed since the night Maya Richardson was wrongly arrested. The Philadelphia Justice Center's main hall was filled with people gathering for a special ceremony. Banners hung from the walls celebrating the first anniversary of the police reform initiative. Maya stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. In the front row sat Sarah Martinez and her mother, both dressed up for the occasion. Next to them were dozens of people whose lives had been changed by the reforms. Former inmates now free, officers who had helped expose corruption, community leaders who had supported the changes. A year ago, Maya began, her voice carrying through the hall. 2 corrupt officers thought they were just making another false arrest. They had no idea their actions would lead to the biggest police reform in our city's history. She gestured to a wall where photos and statistics were displayed. The numbers told a powerful story. 300 wrongly convicted people freed. 50 corrupt officers removed from duty, complaints against police down by 60%. But numbers don't tell the whole story, Maya continued. The real change can be seen in our streets. People no longer walk in fear of those meant to protect them. Officers who serve with honor no longer have to work alongside those who abuse their power. In the audience, Officer Chen, recently promoted to captain, nodded in agreement. She had been instrumental in implementing the new police training programs. Today, we're not just celebrating what we've accomplished, Maya said. We're launching the next phase of our reforms. She unveiled a new program called the Community Justice Partnership. It would bring together police officers, community members, and legal experts to review police practices and suggest improvements. Sarah Martinez, now a senior in high school, would serve as the youth representative. Change doesn't come easily, Maya acknowledged. We faced resistance. There were threats. Some said it couldn't be done. But look around this room. Look at what we built together. The screen behind her showed images from the past year. New officers taking their oath under stricter standards, community meetings where citizens and police worked together, body camera footage being reviewed by civilian committees, former inmates reuniting with their families. Officers Barrett and Conway will serve 20 years in prison, Maya continued. Deputy Commissioner Roberts and his network received even longer sentences. But punishment was never our main goal. Our goal was to rebuild trust, to create a system that works for everyone. She paused, picking up a small frame from the podium. It was her mugshot from that night, now displayed alongside her official DA portrait. I keep these pictures in my office to remind me of 2 things, she explained. First, that power without accountability will always lead to abuse. And second, that change can start with one person willing to stand up, whether it's a teenage girl with a phone camera or a lawyer who wouldn't stay silent. Sarah blushed as people turned to look at her. Her video had inspired others across the country. Similar reform movements were starting in other cities, using Philadelphia's program as a model. But our work isn't finished, Maya said firmly. True change takes time. We must stay vigilant. Every citizen has a role to play in maintaining justice. After the ceremony, people gathered in small groups, sharing stories and plans for the future. Maya watched as veteran officers talked with community members they once viewed with suspicion. Former adversaries were now partners in reform. Lisa Chen approached Maya with a tablet showing the latest statistics. Crime is down, community cooperation is up, and police morale has actually improved since we removed the bad officers. Maya smiled, remembering her father's words about power and accountability. He would have been proud to see this, she thought. As the evening ended, Maya walked to her office. The lights of Philadelphia sparkled through her window, the same view she had seen on her first day as DA. But now it was a different city. Not perfect, but better. A city where justice wasn't just a word, but a reality they worked toward every day. On her desk, next to her father's photo, sat a new frame. Inside was a handwritten note from Sarah Martinez. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest actions. Thank you for showing me that one person can make a difference. Maya looked at her busy schedule for tomorrow. More reforms to implement, more work to do. The story of change in Philadelphia wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning.